You know, one of the things that I've come to realize is that Wednesday has become one of my favorite days of the week. And of course, I come alive when it starts to get to closer to 9 p.m. Why? Because of the summit. And this is a show that is actually meant for you, a show that narrows down on key issues that affect you from one way or another. And we get to dissect some of the key issues right here on the program. Remember, it is 10 days into the month of May 2023. I'm hoping that all is well with you from every part of the world. You are tuned in today. Now, tonight on the program, we all understand that the 19th edition of the ILO Regional Seminar for Labor-Based Practitioners, that is actually slated for the 15th to the 19th of this month, is just fast approaching. And so we are actually understanding that this seminar is being held under the theme Promoting Skills and Productive Decent Jobs for Our Common Better Future. But I'm wondering about that particular part of the future. And so tonight on the summit, we are asking ourselves, where will these decent jobs or productive jobs come from? And even as we look at the future, we're asking ourselves, what about today? Where can we find these decent jobs today? And I'm not alone on this particular set, and I want to bring in on the program the panelists that are joining us from different parts of the world, but those who are also joining us right here in studio. And I want to start off by calling on the set none other than Faustin Mwambari, who's actually the head of Department Employment Ecosystem Policy and Strategy at the Ministry of Public Service and Labor. I'm visually seeing you guys clapping for him as he come to join us on the set tonight on the program. Take a seat, sir. Thank you very much for making time and being part of the program. Also joining us for the second time, making a second appearance on the summit, is a good friend of the show. She's called Solange Tetero. She's the Director General Youth Empowerment at the Ministry of Youth right here in Rwanda. She comes to join us on the show to give us perspective on the youth angle as far as the decent jobs are concerned. What is blocking the acquisition of decent jobs for young people right here in the country? That is what she'll be bringing on the set today. Also joining us on the show for the very first time, he told me he's been in the country for the last 18 months. And of course, we understand he has some good expertise and analysis. He's called Peter Adams. He is the team lead, expert group for skills development, employment promotion, and labor market matching at the Rwanda Development Board. Thank you very much, Peter Adams, for making time and joining us right here on the program. Look, we are not alone. And of course, we have the international body that is actually overseeing matters labor. And we are joined live from Geneva, Switzerland, by Mito Tsukamoto, who's actually the head of Development and Investment Branch, Employment Policy Department at the International Labour Organization, all the way in Geneva. Thank you so much for joining us on the program. Like I said earlier on, this show is actually your show. You get to converse with us. You get to share with us your thoughts. And we've opened all our communication lines, including Twitter, and the hashtag to use as always is the Summit RW. It makes it easier for us to track your tweets. Let's just take a look at some of the conversations that have been said right here. And I want to remind you that actually today was the last day for registration, or is the last day for registration for this seminar. And you can go on my Twitter pinned tweet. You'll be able to see the link and you'll be able to register. Now, we have Jude Muzale, who's actually already shared his thoughts on this at Jude Jojo, and he says excitement glowing, productive capacities, employability, jobs for the jobless with better incomes, employment security, that is contracts, protection from vulnerability, health and safety, work-family balance, etc. Important dimensions of decent work compliance. This is very important because we'll be talking about decent jobs, and we want to understand, what do you understand by the word decent job? Annette Nadukunda, who's actually tweeting us, says she's looking forward to making a minimum and living wage standards a reality by putting in place or reforming policies on this. We deserve better, especially those providing casual or non-skilled labor. We'll definitely also look into that, especially when it comes to women and jobs. J.L. Kaitengore, who says, I think that agro-farming and agro-processing is a sure bet with focus on not only local market, but regional, continental, and worldwide. I think he's responding to where these jobs will be found. The hashtag, as always, is the Summit RW. I'll be coming back on the magic wall to read some of your tweets in the course of this production. Lady and gentlemen, and of course, including our friend Mito, who's joining us from Geneva, welcome to the Summit. I want to open up the conversation from right here at home, and probably I'll start, today I'm going to break those rules. My mom taught me well. She always said, ladies go first, but today I'm going to break that rule, and I hope she'll pardon me over there. But I want to start with you, Faustin, and of course, sitting just closer here to me, when it comes to this issue, of decent jobs, we all have a different thought process around what decent jobs should look like and what they are. Maybe if I could start with you, before we even get deeper into the conversation, how should decent jobs look like? What is a decent job? Because today we're in a scenario where people are saying, man, any job I'll do. I just have nothing to do. I've been jobless for the last 3 years. Give me anything. What does decent job look like or should look like?
Thank you. I think there have been theories about decent jobs. Mm-hmm. There are people who say, we need more jobs. Mm-hmm. Whatever jobs, but we need jobs.
More jobs.
But we believe in our, this time we should not say we need any job. Mm-hmm. We need decent jobs. And those are jobs that I can say that can give the dignity mm-hmm. to the employer. Mm-hmm. So there are so many indicators of decent jobs, but I can at least I give 4. Yeah. It's a job where someone has access to social security mm-hmm. and social protection. It's a job where someone has an income, a wage that is allowing him to live above poverty line. Mm-hmm. And it's a job where someone has safety and security at work. Mm-hmm. And of course, it's a job that respects the rights of a worker. So
these are the jobs you're looking to
create?
These
are the jobs we are looking for. We don't need the jobs that do not dignify the workers.
Right. I want to bring in Tetero. I mean, they say all jobs have to be decent. Let's talk about the practicability of that and probably your personal understanding of a decent job, especially when it comes to young people who are actually saying, I'm jobless, I've been jobless, I'm happy to do anything. People go into our DMs and they say, man, just give me anything, I'll do it.
Yeah, I think that's a very sensitive question when we talk about decent jobs, because now we are facing a crisis where mostly young people just want any job, like you said. Yeah. And I think Faustin explained very well what a decent job is, and those are the jobs that want to be created by our young people, because we know that most of the young people actually occupy junior positions in different companies, and we are still facing that challenge where most of those jobs are not decent and do not offer dignified lives to our young people. And when you ask me a definition of a decent job in the perspective of a young person, I think that it is a job where, as a young person, you feel secure and you can dream big. You can have big dreams, and you think that job will help you to achieve those dreams by the salary you get, by the social security you get. And you know that that job is actually preparing you for you to have a better life when you grow old, and that by that time you are not capable of doing that same job. Yeah. You have somehow a way of living a dignified life.
Right, that's interesting. And Peter Adams, I mean, I'm looking at your title, and I'm trying to understand the aspect of the employment promotion and labor market matching. And in this particular case, fusing it with just that question of decent job as you try to match these people with the market in terms of their labor. Just try to make sense of us from that perspective of the definition of the kind of job that you do in that sense, and the place of decent jobs and how they should look like.
Yes, thank you. And to start off with, in terms of a labor market analysis or labor market assessment, that should be the starting point, so that we understand what the demand for skills are in the market, and what the current supply of skills are, and what those gaps are. Yeah. And that is really the focus of what we should be doing as a starting point, and understanding that gap. Then we can drive the process to ensure that we have a skills development system, a skills development ecosystem that supplies the necessary skills that the market is looking for. Right. And without that, we always going to stumble in the dark, right? And not know exactly what kind of jobs we should be looking at stimulating, where we should be stimulating the growth for employment, and decent jobs.
So the idea is to look at the skills and the gap for those particular jobs. I'll come back and try to find out what has been done practically to actually do what you just said. But I want to bring in Mito, who's joining us from Geneva. Mito, the International Labour Organization, for the last 100 years, actually has been doing this. It has been trying to advocate for decent jobs. But even as we look at these decent jobs and talking about, pushing this for a common future, people are saying, what about now? Where will we find these decent jobs, these jobs that actually dignify us today as we speak? From where you sit, what would you answer such a person who's asking such a question?
Interesting question, and it's a challenging one to answer at the same time. I think to start with, I'd just like to start by mentioning that the ILO, the International Labour Organization, is a tripartite organization, and so we have partners, which are the government, the workers, and the employers. And of course, each of those partners have a key stake, but also a key responsibility to ensure that the jobs are decent. So when we say, where are those jobs now, and where can they be in the future, I think those three partners need to work very much together through social dialogue, to try to ensure that we create the policies that are needed to ensure that all jobs are decent. I think the definition of decent work was mentioned earlier, but decent jobs and decent work are only possible when the work that is provided is productive, equally for women and men, in conditions of freedom, equity, security, and human dignity. All work should be able, we should be aspiring to this. So all partners that are engaging in developing these policies and ensuring that those jobs that are being offered are decent need to aspire to this. And as the colleague that was talking about youth mentioned, it needs to be jobs that youth can also aspire to. And very much it's about jobs which pay fairly, guarantee secured employment, and also ensures occupational safety and health at work. And there are many jobs which we are trying to aim to that level of decent work. And I think it's very much the efforts of everybody together to try to ensure that, we're putting those policies in place and that we're also creating those jobs which are decent to start with for all people who are looking for a job.
Interesting. I wanted to just stay with us because I'm going to come back to you again. But in the meantime, let me talk to Faustin, especially picking up from the aspect of policy to be able to drive this creation of these decent jobs and ensuring that actually that is what we are seeing. Faustin, you actually sit in a ministry that is actually charged with checking out public service and labor in that particular case. Of course, policy formulation around this is very key coming from where you sit. Let's talk a bit about Rwanda case study in terms of ensuring that the country is achieving this, because we have been able to see most people saying, okay, the wage bill, issues to do with, the welfare of the staff, the market rates, even in pay. You have people who are actually paid differently if they are working in Rwanda, but they would be paid differently if they're working in another different country. Let's talk a bit about this from a current situation as far as these decent jobs are concerned.
Thank you. I believe that the issue of decent work is contextual, depending on the country's economy, the country's labor market. So with that in mind, I think our country has done a lot, and it is even clear, stipulated in our NST 1. We need to create productive and decent jobs. Why do we bring the element of productive? It's because when you say decent jobs, someone needs the decent work, but for you to have a decent and dignified work, you also need to deserve it. You need to produce. So it goes with productivity. So from the policy perspective, we need to first of all promote productivity, and the productivity is a key enabler for decent work. So when you look at sectors, you see that sectors like in service industries, hospitality, bank, technology, these are the most paying sectors because the level of productivity is also high. Even the level of skills of workers in that sector, they're also high. So I think there are three major things we need to link when you want to get to the decent work. The first element is skills. How do we reskill and upskill our workers in the sectors? This will determine productivity, and then productivity will determine decent work. In addition to that, we need to see, once we've provided relevant skills to the workers, are they really becoming productive? And then when they are becoming productive, are they enjoying the decent work? So we can't just say one without another. So that's why we, from the even ILO perspectives, while we think where will jobs come from, we also think where will skills, what will be the skills needed, and how will the social dialogue work. Because once you already give skills, you're already promoting jobs, and then once you get those jobs, how do we make them decent? There we bring an element of social dialogue. So we have built in our country different platforms, social dialogue platforms, where I bring government, private sector, workers' organization, and discuss on the challenges. And then we come up with contextual solutions that can work for all of us. And I think it's one of the things that we've done, even bringing the meeting when you started with. The meeting, the regional meeting on labor-based practitioners. We want to bring our brothers and sisters from Africa to discuss. Of course, we have common challenges in Africa. Our youth have challenges related to access to relevant skills, access to market when they are producing, and access to finance. But although we have same challenges, but we can have different solutions. So we want to learn from our brothers and sisters from other countries on their best practices, but also there is what they can also learn from us. So I think in terms of promoting decent work and jobs, there is always an element of seeing how we can increase skills, how do we make use of those skills to be productive, and then the result is we enjoy the outcome of that, which is decent work. So I really want to emphasize on decent work as a result of those major two elements.
Right, and the skilling is very important up there. And I want to hear from you, Deje, from where you said, as far as, upskilling, reskilling, and supporting young people to learn and unlearn. I mean, even as this meeting comes to Kigali, the 19th ILO Regional Seminar for labor-based practitioners comes to Kigali, he says that it's an opportunity for us also to learn from others. But what is it that they'll be learning from the Rwanda case study as far as the efforts to skill young people to have decent jobs is concerned?
Yes, the government of Rwanda has put in place different programs to support young people to skill young people, upskill those who need to be upskilled, and to reskill those who are facing the issue of skills to be able to fit in the market. It is not only about skilling them, it is also about putting them out there in the market to be able to try and put in practice the skills they've got, and to see if they can make a living out of those skills. Speaking of skilling, you know that actually the government of Rwanda has put more effort in enrolling more young people in technical and vocational education courses for them to have those practical skills that will help them to get employment once they graduate from either secondary schools or universities. And again, we have several programs under the Ministry of Labor and Public Service and RDB that support young people who, after completing secondary schools, are unable to access different jobs, and they need other skills, and that is upskilling to be able to fit in a job market. And again, because we believe that actually we do not only want young people to access jobs that have been created by other people, we also want our young people to innovate around challenges that they're facing in the community and create solutions. And that is where the government of Rwanda put in place different components and programs to support young people to access finance. And that is done in terms of grants and also, BDF that offers loans to young people at very low interest for them to be able to put in action their ideas and respond to challenges that are in the community.
So looking at all that, there's still a big challenge because we are understanding that more young people are still actually staying in school. And this is probably for you, Peter, because while I was preparing for this, I've learned that more young people are staying in school. It's actually a good thing for some people. But on the flip side, they are not entering the labor market at an early age because there is something that is actually bringing us to around 200 million young people who are either still unemployed or they have a job but are poor. Someone has a job but he's constantly telling you, please send me this, send me that. I want to understand, even from this conversation that is coming to here in Rwanda, from an RDB perspective and probably localizing the challenge here, what are we seeing? Because Deje says RDB has been helping young people to, get internship and then later and they get connected to jobs.
Yes.
But this is the reality. Some people have the jobs, but they're still not able to meet their basic needs in this.
Yes.
Where's the gap?
I think a critical component of this is private sector engagement, right? And through private sector engagement, that is bringing the employer into the ecosystem of skills development and workplace learning, because that's a critical component for young people to be able to get access to develop their skills in the workplace. It is also critical for them to actually get that work experience and to grow the employer's skills base. And without that, if we don't get employers into the equation and become a focal point at the juncture of private sector engagement in skills development, then we're going to fail. And within the RDB, what we've done in terms of the National Skills Development and Employment Promotion Strategy, as you would know, the strategy is actually the vehicle through which we want to achieve some of the goals of and the vision of NST1. And that is to ensure that everybody, the workforce has relevant skills, employers get the necessary skills for them to provide decent employment.
Yeah. What do you think what do you think this seminar is going to help you with in terms of rethinking the strategy? Because we cannot do the same thing and expect different results.
Yes.
And I'm sure that every strategy that has been put in place might be having its limitations. And so what is this forum or this seminar going to help, let's say, from the skilling perspective in terms of relooking at your strategy? What do you expect from it, from the seminar?
What we hope to achieve is to learn from our peers on the continent, in terms of how they tackled skills development and the creation of employment and decent employment specifically. One of the areas that we want to drive and to find out more is if we embark on putting in place sector skills councils, for instance, in Rwanda. And there have been, I must admit, they have been established back in 2013, I think. Yeah. But, I don't think private sector fully engaged with the idea. This time around, we're targeting and tackling the issue slightly differently, because employers need to be at the forefront of the discussion, right? So we want to create a demand-led education and skills development system. And that in itself tells us that we will drive, or there will be a pull factor in terms of what the skills are that the employers want, what the market wants, versus what we are supplying from higher learning institutions and TVET.
Okay, I understand that, and it's a good conversation that we should be able to also have here, a demand-led education system, and it's a very important point. But let me bring in, Mito. Mito, it's going to be the 19th edition, this ILO regional seminar of labor-based practitioners, 19th edition. And someone who's hearing this is probably saying, what have the past 18 sessions of the similar nature achieved? Isn't this just going to be another talk shop where, we're going to say very beautiful things, and then, when we go back home, we all go to business as usual? I mean, what would make it business unusual coming out of this 19th edition of this seminar?
No, I thank you for that question. I mean, I think the important thing about the seminar is being able to take this opportunity to bring South-South collaboration and to bring the experiences from different countries, as has already been mentioned, but in a very candid fashion. I don't think we can only talk about the successes. I think we also need to look at the challenges and to see what the lessons learned have been. And over the years, I mean, you mentioned this is the 19th seminar. The very first seminar was held in 1990 in Mbeya, Tanzania. It was organized by the ILO's Employment Intensive Investment Program. And then it was quite a small adventure, and it was really trying to develop this idea of South-South collaboration so that different countries could come together and have those exchanges. So what the ILO has been doing is really trying to facilitate that space or fora for discussion. And we've gone from a small group of maybe 10, 20 colleagues now to several hundred participants. I mean, we've had up to 500 participants in one of the earlier seminars. And it really gives that opportunity for colleagues to speak frankly with each other, to also network outside of the conference hall itself, but to really be able to, to take those things into practice. One of the concrete things I could mention is that there is also another initiative that was in parallel organized by the ILO, which is the labor-based institutes, the training institute. So looking at the skills aspect, and there's about 13 labor-based institutes that were created throughout Africa, again, over many years. And at every regional seminar, or at most of them, we've always had discussions as to how to strengthen those labor-based training institutions so that they can also benefit more concretely, looking at the challenges and looking at some of the, the future issues, bringing in new technologies, new ways of incorporating tools. Some of the other challenges, the most recent workshop that was held in 2021 focused on COVID-19 and the implications of that on the training issues. And so I do think that it does give a very nice space for colleagues to be able to take that opportunity to really network and to exchange on many of these issues.
Right. However, it concerns me, especially looking at some of the grim statistics, especially when it comes to gender, and enshrinement within the labor force. I mean, looking at the fact that finding a job is much tougher for women until today, the 21st century, with all the support in terms of the initiatives that have been done. And even when the women are employed, they tend to, work in low quality jobs. And we are understanding that also their participation rate for employment is actually at around 47, while the men is around 72%. WEF is saying that it will take us around 132 years to close this gap. We don't have that time. So how will such forums, or how have they been looking into closing this gap? How do we fast track this process through these kind of engagements that you're putting together?
No, especially on the gender empowerment issue, which is a very important one. And we're finding, as you said, even in the most recent studies that we've carried out with looking at some of the investments that our development financing institution partners are putting funding forward. It is true that, the women and youth seem to be participating less. And I think a lot of that has to do with the design of the program. It goes back to, and something I was saying earlier, also the policies that are being implemented. And oftentimes these kinds of seminars do allow for certain countries to take advantage of some of the policies that have been implemented, that have worked well. I can tell you that in some of our own programs where we've actually worked with other partners like the World Bank, we have been able to implement programs in the construction infrastructure sector, which is often very male dominated, and have been able to ensure that women, are not only participating, but they're actually supervisors, they're actually receiving equal wages, they're gaining all the same benefits as men, and also empowering them to be able to take a much more active role in the economy, but also in terms of ensuring that, their households have the livelihoods that they require. So in many ways, these examples, and they do exist. I mean, this program that I'm mentioning, I think, had women's participation up in around in the 80s and 80%. So, it is very much possible. And I think having those examples and being able to then see how those projects were implemented, and being able then to try to replicate that in your own country is extremely important.
Right. Let me bring the conversation back home here in the studio, Foster. Rwanda case study, especially when it comes to women and young people in terms of the youth, but mostly women specifically. This data is very sad. In fact, even when reading it, I felt like, why are we even talking about this in this day and age? It's a sad scenario. What is happening in the Rwanda case?
To begin with, it's important also to know even the statistics show that the labor market in trans, the number of women is bigger than of men. So that means that even the impact on labor market would also be bigger than that of men. Of course, there are other invisible challenges that facing young people to smoothly enter the labor market in general. And when it comes to women, you see that there's still a challenge. A big number of women are employed in the informal sector. And
does it concern you?
Yes, yes.
The Ministry of Labour.
Let me say, as the Ministry of Labour, what we are doing. In general, as a government, we have put some affirmative actions to promote women, young youth and women in our labor market. Like I can say, for example, our National Employment Program, where all beneficiaries should make sure that 50% should be women before other competitions comes in. Other interventions related to skills, we have interventions related to workplace learning to address the gap of skills. We have interventions related to access to finance and even access to market, because those are the common challenges. So in every intervention, we put affirmative actions to promote youth and women.
How has that worked?
So I think in the last years, like last 4 years, it has worked, because if you can see in our statistics, for example, in terms of youth, 80% of jobs created were youth. And almost 50% of jobs, I won't give exact statistics, but because there are some affirmative actions, they are women. So we say 80% of jobs created since 2017, they are jobs for youth in our economy, and of almost 50% jobs created went to, let's say, to women. So this gives an assurance that in the, let's say, if we continue that way, it can really address the gender gap on the labor market. So we believe we need to put more efforts. Policy-wise, it is very well. But when it comes to practice, for example, you say we need 50% of women in TVET and science, but when you go to practice, it doesn't work directly. So we still need to see how our policies can be fully implemented in terms of addressing gender gap in our labor market. But of course, it is a journey. As I said, there are some barriers. There are some barriers facing young ladies than men. What is important is that the policies are there, and then we need to materialize. And one of the things we shall learn from these meetings, you know, we have different practices in our continent. Some countries might be doing well, like we know we are doing well in terms of gender balance and support. Some other countries might have best practice in terms of labor market interventions, in terms of labor-intensive and innovative approaches that can support youth. So if I can give you like 3 major side events that are very attractive and that will help in this meeting, we have a side event on youth employment and private sector engagement. This is where people will discuss on how we can do better, how we can reimagine skills development and job creation, because the labor market is dynamic. It has been traditional, but this time with the changing environment, working environment, there are so many different practices we can do. So we need to see how private sector can work with and support young people to smoothly enter the labor market. There is another one on skills development and the future of work. This is very important. Skills development, TVET, and future of work. This will help us to see different practices in terms of reimagining skills for youth, for today and the future. And also another very important is on social dialogue and the future of work. This will be like we discuss how can we play our roles. What would be the role played by government in terms of promoting labor? What would be the role of private sector? What would be the role of trade unions and social partners and development partners? So this will be like a platform on how can we do better. And having also ILO as a global partner in this, they also be able to share the best practices on how we can do better. I think one of the expectations from this meeting is to see how do we learn where they do better than us, and how do they learn where we do better than them in terms of skills, in terms of youth employment and private sector engagement, and of course in terms of reimagining how the future of work would look like.
Right. Interesting. Solange, as you sit there as a woman, first of all, yourself, how does this, first of all, make you feel, and what are the, key commitments that you'd like to see come out, even at such a forum, to try and deal with this issue, and try to fast-track the process of closing this gap for women?
First of all, I want to agree with you that it is a shame that we are discussing about this issue right now in this century. This is an issue that has been out there, and a lot of efforts have been put in place to try to address that and to bring women on board in the contribution of creating jobs and contributing to economies.
Yeah.
So it is a shame that we still have these gaps, and like Faustin said, the government has put in place programs to support that, but we need to be able to implement those policies and strategies downstream to see the impact, And when we talk about this as a young woman,
yeah.
I do not only see this as a discussion you're having in the studio, but I also see this in the rural places, in the community, where you see young women not being able to employ their full potentials in contributing to the development of the country. So when I see this kind of forum and seminars coming to Rwanda, I think it is an opportunity for us as Rwandans and as young women to be able to join the table. And I always say to women, to young women, even if you're not invited to the table, even if they don't put a chair for you there, bring a folding chair. You come to the table, you discuss, you bring your own ideas, and you contribute, because we have the capacities, we have the knowledge, we have the skills, and we don't have to sit and wait for people to come and call us to join. For example, when elections are happening, you see they say, we need a woman for secretary. We need a woman for maybe a vice president. We don't have to wait for them to call us. We have to stand up and show our ideas in building the economy, because we have the capacity.
Yeah, interesting. I mean, beyond showing up and also beyond the affirmative action, what more needs to be done, Peter, on this issue of gender, closing this gap for women, especially in finding decent jobs and be given the dignity they deserve?
Yeah. I think, first of all, we need to start by ensuring that women participate in skills development equally to their male counterparts. Whether it is at school, whether it's at TVET colleges, whether it is in internships or workplace learning interventions, that we need to ensure that happens. So like Foster said and Solange had said earlier, the fact that we're still talking about this in this day and age is really a problem, and it needs to be overcome. But how do we overcome that? How do we change people's minds? How do we change employers' minds to ensure that, because they're the ones that create the employment opportunities, and likewise, young entrepreneurs, they will also do that, and we must ensure that there's a change in mind, a change in mindset, that women should not be left behind. And I like what Solange had said. But we need to ensure that at the places where it matters the most, in the workplace, in the schools, in those benches, that is where women need to be, what's the name?
Is this what's happening as we speak today?
Participating. Not fully entirely yet, but there's a lot of work and advocacy and promotion that we need to ensure that happens.
Right. There's another group that is also interesting, and I think this is where I want to bring in Mito again. It's the SMEs. I mean, they make up 90% of the private sector, and they actually do provide what we call, from numerical statistics, an estimated of around 80% of the jobs across, the African continent, for that matter. They represent an important driver when it comes to economic growth. But I want to understand what their role or their place will be in the conversations that will be taking place right here in Rwanda, and how are you looking at the SME sector from a perspective of creating decent jobs and jobs that actually provide dignity?
No, I think very much SMEs need to be part of this discussion. And as discussed, the private sector is an important partner in all this, not only as an employer, but also as a key partner in determining what those policies should be that can be implemented, at the local or national level. It's not just SMEs. I believe it's also micro and small, medium enterprises. In many cases, we're training. We've been talking about skills quite a lot today, and I think a lot of that training is also about ensuring that those individuals who may be in the informal economy and who just haven't had the opportunity are also given that opportunity to upskill and to be able to enter the markets. And a lot of that has to do with using those skills and ensuring that they have the right skills to be able to find the right jobs. But also in terms of starting up their own micro, small, medium enterprises. Just to give you a concrete example, in the Gambia, in one of our programs, we actually supported youth and women and youth to be able to work on labor-based road construction. And some of these youth, and I think this is where the sustainability and how one judges success is when no longer are we as organizations behind them, but that they themselves have started their own micro, small, medium enterprise to be able to then hire other youth and other women. And I like the comments that were made earlier. I mean, I think women do have to come forward. I think that they need to, be proactive and be able to, to ensure that their voices are heard, that they have an equal weight at whatever table that is being discussed. But no, definitely the role of SMEs is important here, and especially when we're talking about the transition to formality and trying to, bring the informal sector jobs into more formalized opportunities, but also with the proper training and the proper policies in place.
Interesting. Mito, thank you for that intervention. Let me come back in studio. Foster, there's another group that also most people also feel are a bit neglected. These are the people with disability. And a lot of times, they are not really spoken about in most cases. Let's talk a bit about that, and especially the Rwanda case scenario, and also with this conversation at this, what do you want labor-based practitioners to do, to ensure that people with disability are engaged? And also from a Rwanda perspective, what lessons would they learn as far as how Rwanda handles people with disability when it comes to the labor-related issues?
We will have people with disability in our meeting, and I think this is the first step, just to think with them.
Yeah.
We cannot think the solutions without the beneficiary of the solution.
Yeah.
From the policy perspective,
yeah.
Rwanda has done a lot in terms of empowerment of people with disabilities, in terms of support, in terms of affirmative actions. For example, I can give you from the labor law. If we have a competition between someone with disability and someone without disability, if they have the same mark, the one with disability is already will be already given a job. That's an affirmative action. And there are so many affirmative actions, but still we have challenges because there are policies, but also there is what I can call mindset. Mindset change is a process.
Yeah.
You cannot just say people will not understand until they see it that disability is not inability. Disability might be physically having disability physically, but intellectually, mindly, you're very high. So it's a process of changing the mindset. That is implementation. But in terms of policy and programs, there are always actions aiming at supporting them. And as I said, in our national employment programs, skills development, and workplace running interventions, there is always an indicator of people with disabilities. And whenever they are part of the process, they are the one preferred. So I think a lot has been done, but we cannot say we are there. There is a progress. So one of the things that will be discussed in that is a inclusive labor market, where people discuss on the best practices in terms of empowering youth, empowering women, but also people with disabilities, just trying to show that disability doesn't mean inability. It means we expect to learn from one another. The continent is big. Someone will come from Ghana and say, this is how we are doing things. The other one comes, in North, this is how we are doing things. So we expect that we can always learn one from another, and But what I can say, what is very important to the people with disabilities, step number one, it is equal access to education and skills development.
Right.
And then equal access to employment opportunities, access to finance opportunities. So I'm not going into much details in our programs, but we have specific programs that support youth, women, and people with disabilities.
Right. Okay. And Peter, I mean, from where you sit, especially on the issue of inclusiveness, and you had mentioned earlier on the place of the private sector as well. The private sector says, you know, like, we are not government. We do things in our own way, in our own fashion. How do we, you know, create that synergy, especially when you're looking at people who are labor-based practitioners coming together to sit in a room? What should be done in that particular case? So that if you talk about a certain thing that can work, we're also saying private sector, look, it can also be beneficial to you.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think one thing that I mentioned is that when we find employers not necessarily open to allowing people to come into their workplace for skills development and training,
Yeah.
then we have a bit of a problem. So what we need to do is ensure that mind change happens with employers. So by us putting in place sector skills councils that is predominantly driven by employers with a mindset that they need to ensure that skills development happens in relation to what their needs are, right? Opening their workplaces for those learning opportunities for young people, and also supporting small businesses, those small SMMEs, because they can provide critical services in the value chain, you know, and in the supply chain to the bigger employers.
Yeah.
And that is how they should be thinking about it, how they should be thinking of helping small businesses, how they should be thinking of helping youth enter into the space of employment and decent work.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we're trying to put these sector skills councils in place based on the priority sectors of the government of Rwanda, and because they are private sector driven, but in a triple helix model where there's academia, private sector, and government, that will hopefully help us lead to that demand-driven skills ecosystem,
Yeah.
Which would lead to better jobs, more jobs, and businesses just growing.
Right. Interesting. I want us to now take a round of questions that probably you'll be able to squeeze in, your thoughts in terms of the closing remarks. But I want to read, first of all, some of the comments. I'm seeing we have a lot of them coming through. We have those who are watching us and streaming us live on our YouTube channel as we speak right now. I have Amos Wanyiri, who actually says he's tuned in, and of course Umulisa, I think F says yes, definitely following keenly. But Apollinaire Bizimana says this upcoming seminar is the right forum to discuss and share best practices on how to promote employability, skills development, and promote labor-intensive investment projects. This is what he says. Adventist says that there's a good idea that is coming out of the show on increasing the market. Let me just quickly take a look also on the tweets that have also been coming in. Mohire, who says that there's still a gap for vulnerable young people to be skilled, which prevents them from getting jobs or creating their own. The government and its partners put specific programs to support vulnerable people. This is what he says. The government should be able to put such programs. Kwesi Rutera, Forsten says, here men and women need to work where the space is livable, there's livable wages, the benefits and the working conditions are also safe in that particular case. Interesting conversations going on right there. If there's any that you've had and you want to put in your thoughts, please continue doing that. But in just a nutshell, under 30 seconds, Mito, I want us to just get a closing remark from you. What is the commitment that probably you're putting forward for people who probably have been skeptical on such forums and they feel like maybe nothing much will come out of it? What convincing power would you be able to put out tonight such that people who have been having such feelings might be able to feel a bit convinced that they should follow this forum?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think if we look at the global challenges and what is happening in the world with many different challenges, whether it's climate change, food security, health pandemics, the inclusivity and decent work is so central to finding a solution to this. And I did want to raise one thing that hasn't come up. I know that the emphasis on skills and jobs is quite important. I think it's important to consider that employment oftentimes gets put back as a residual. Yeah. I think oftentimes when we talk about addressing climate change, we look at the environmental degradation, and we may not look at the jobs that are being created or could be created to support that sector. It's the same with agriculture. We look at agricultural development without really focusing on how jobs and skills can really have an impact on this. And I think it's really bringing those examples forward. I really encourage those who are participating, to bring their challenges, to bring forward their best practices. And to try to work together. There has to be systemic change. We can't work on this in silos. We can't each work, in their different corners. All the multiple challenges that we're facing today really requires a holistic, systemic change and a systemic leadership in that. And I think that we really should, I really encourage the forum and the practitioners to come forward and to bring all those good ideas forward and to try to really implement them in the design of the programs. I think the design of the programs and the design of policies are so crucial here because that's what really does, create a ripple effect, if you'd like, in terms of what is being implemented by employers, workers, and governments.
Interesting. Thank you. Thank you so much, Mito, for those important points. But let's share the remaining 2 minutes or 1 minute between us to just give us a closing parts. Maybe Peter, just one word in terms of what to expect and in terms of the commitment from RDB on this. Just real quick.
We want to provide our stakeholders and our partners and our key partners with necessary information for them to make better decisions, to make evidence-based decisions. And in that way, we can provide them with labor market intelligence, information that will certainly push them in the right direction.
Interesting. Deje, what do you want out of this conference? What is your word of closing?
I think young people are at the center of all strategies and policies. From this seminar, I expect young people attending to be able to understand how they can seize those opportunities and make something big out of those opportunities.
Interesting. How about you, Foster?
All I can say is that I can't wait to the forum because it's a forum which is very, very important to us. I really want to see Africans, labor ministers, African labor experts, African researchers discussing about our common better future, how we can make our common better future through decent work, through skilling, reskilling and upskilling our young people to give them access to market, access to finance, access to opportunities. I think and I believe that we'll be able to learn from others in those things, and also we'll be also able to showcase what we are doing well and what we are confident that others can learn from us. So we really need to create, to enjoy the better future through decent work and productive jobs.
Interesting. Thank you very much. I have a question here. Could you please share information on the dates and venues for this seminar? If I'm not wrong, it is on the 15th to the 19th of May, right? And it's taking place at the Inare Conference Arena. That is where it is taking place. Jump onto my Twitter. There's a pinned tweet right there. It has a link, and there's no extension of the registration. It's ending tonight.
Well, I think it is ending tomorrow.
Tomorrow. Right. Good. Interesting. So it's ending tomorrow. You have until tomorrow to be able to register for this important event. But thank you so much for making time on my guests right here on the studio, and of course Mito as well, joining us all the way from Geneva. I want to say thank you for being a part of the program. It doesn't end here. The conversation continues across our social media platforms. Feel free to join us. The hashtag to use as always is the Summit RW. My name as always is Eugene Adnangwe. Goodbye for now.